Hello guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Senna, and on this channel I post content relating to my life living abroad as an international student and everything else in between. So I've been trying to share informative content relating to the process that you need to go through to come abroad to study. Come abroad to the UK to study if that is a plan that you have for your future. So if that is something that you're interested in knowing more about, please consider joining the family. Just click on the right subscribe button down below and also click on the bell icon close to it so that you don't miss any new videos I upload, guys. So in today's video, I am going to be talking about the social work interview process. This is a very much anticipated video. I've had a couple of people, ask me about it constantly. So this is it, guys. I hope you find this helpful. I hope you find it informative, guys. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about, the interview process in general. And then I took the time to go through my personal interview. I recorded it when I had it at the time, and I typed out the questions. So I have the questions typed. At the end of the video, I'm going to leave an email where you can email me if you're interested in having these questions. I also leave the email in my description box below so you can check it out. Just send me an email, state your interest in getting your hands on this document, and I'm going to forward it to you so that you have the exact questions that I was asked. Maybe the questions might differ when it's your turn, but generally it would be around these same questions, and to give you an idea as to what you need to do to prepare. So we are going to go through them together in this video. I am going to give you some tips, like from my own perspective on how I went about answering my questions. Hopefully, you can use that as motivation and inspiration, whatever the word is, for you as well in your own interview. So if you're interested in hearing what I have to say today, then keep on watching. Okay guys, so if you are watching me, if you are watching this video, then I want to believe that you are in the process of applying for your own course in social work, or you are just thinking about it and you want to have an idea as to how the process is like. So I've done previous videos which are social work related, where I talked about the application process in general, and I've also talked about writing your personal statement. I'll leave links to those in the description box so you can check it out if you've not done so already. But yeah, so once you've gone through this process, you've submitted your application, your personal statement, everything, and your application goes through. For social work, they would invite you for an interview. Sometimes the interview is in two stages. Sometimes you have a written test to do before a face-to-face interview, which was the case in my own situation. I had to do a written test. Like, it's not any giddy test, like something very simple. So in my time, I was given a video to watch. I was given a link to a particular video to watch, and then I was to talk about the video, what I thought about it, and what my thoughts were, about some particular issues that were presented in the video. So I had to do that. Then after I did that, I guess I did well in that stage. It's like in stages. So once you do well in the first stage, they would invite you for a face-to-face interview. And so that was in my case. In other situations, it could be the test. Maybe you don't have a written test, but you have to do a group work situation where you would be put in a group with other people who have also applied for the course, and you'll be given tasks to do. In this situation, I think they are trying to find out how you perform in a team situation, whether you're a good team player, what your strengths and your weaknesses are, whether you recognize that, and how you're able to control things like that. So all these tasks are just to find out your suitability for the course, as you would imagine. So yes, that could be, you could have a written test, and you could have a group situation, and you most likely will have a face-to-face interview. From my experience and from the experiences of others, that is like generally how the social work interview process is like. So once you're invited for one of for that, you would be told what it's going to look like. Sometimes they even give you materials ahead to prepare. Yeah. So yes, that's what the interview process is like. You need, like, there's no going around this. I'm yet to hear about someone who gained admission to come study social work who did not do an interview. So yes, you would most likely do an interview for your social work application. So yes, so basically the interview is just to assess your suitability for the course. They want to know whether you've done your research into social work, whether you know what the roles and responsibilities of a social worker is, like whether you know what you're getting yourself into, what your skills are from previous work or educational training that you have, what your skills are that you are bringing or you are likely to bring onto the course, things like that. So for my case, I realized that I answered 16 questions in total, guys. That was a lot. That was a lot. I didn't even realize at the time until I was recently trying to type the questions out, and I realized that I answered 16 questions, and these were divided into like six main subgroups. So they asked me questions related to my personal motivation, others related to the role of a social worker in general, like what I thought those were, my skills, my skill sets, and as well as general social work knowledge. I'm going to be going into the questions, guys, don't worry. And then they also asked about what I thought student life would look like and how I would manage the opportunities and challenges that brings. And then finally, teamwork. I feel like teamwork is a theme that really runs through, like, even in your personal statements, you want to be talking about teamwork, how you have, been a good team player, I guess. So yes, those were the six main categories that my questions were kind of, grouped under. So yes, now let's go into the questions. I'm not going to go through all 16 questions. Like I said from the beginning, I'm going to leave my email below where you can, email me expressing your interest in this sample questions, and I will forward them to you. But so with regards to the personal motivation, in fact, this first question I would always remember, even without going through the recording. Why do you want to train as a social worker, and why now? Like, you would imagine that would be one of the first questions. Like, why are you choosing this course? Why do you want to study this course? Especially if you are changing career paths. If that's not what you studied for your undergraduate, for instance, and you're changing to social work, they will definitely ask you what the motivation is. Why are you changing? So that was what they asked me, and the answer to this question needs to be like very personal. It will be very personal to you. Like, why are you considering a career path? If it's just for you to jackpot, as they would say, for you to immigrate from your country, like, of course, you're not going to say that. You really need to think and prepare for interview. Generally, when you're going for interviews, you prepare, right? So you need to think about, a suitable response to this question. In my case, I talked about my experience, how I have worked in HR for a while now, and although I did enjoy the experience, I didn't see myself doing it into the foreseeable future. So I began to think about, my career options. Like, I did say a lot of things, but like in summary, that was the path that I took. I told them that my attention was drawn to social work by a family who is also a social worker. I did my research into it and I liked what I was seeing, and so I decided to volunteer, and all these lived experiences have further motivate me to want to train so that I can develop the skills needed to effectively help people in vulnerable situations. So that was the question. There were two questions under personal motivation. I'm not going to read the second one. Then when we go to the role of a social worker, one of the questions that they asked me was, what are some of the main tasks and responsibilities of a social worker? This you would have, you would have known from your research when you were writing your personal statement, when you were doing the initial application. Like, you need to research about the course that you're going into, right? You don't want to be going into something blindly. What if it's something that you would not really be interested in, or you don't see yourself doing into the foreseeable future? So, like, you would know what the main tasks and responsibilities are. You should know by now, like by this time that they've invited you for an interview. Social workers usually, help people in vulnerable situation. By help, like, you provide support in the form of like giving them information on, the services available in the communities, making assessments, doing risk assessments. Like, for instance, if you're working in child protection and cases come to you, you need to go out to talk to families and people around families, to talk to, children's schools, to talk to health, police, like gather whatever information you need to be able to do a proper assessment of the situation. And then from there, you can come up with a plan on how you can intervene in the situation for better outcomes for the client's group that you're serving. So basically, as a social worker, your role will involve like assessments, risk assessments, interventions, care planning, things like that. So yes, those are some of the things that you'll be doing depending on which field of social work that you're in. There are so many things that social workers do, guys. I would admonish you to do your research, and there's so much information out there. Another question from that category was, how, like, they asked me about what I think the challenges would be for social workers. Like, what do I think that social workers face in their day-to-day? Like, what challenges do they face? Like, there are so many challenges that social workers face. One of them is that social workers have very high case loads in most situations, and that prevents them from, really doing the people work that they're supposed to do. And for instance, you're supposed to build relationship with your clients, and that requires you to have time, to spend with them, getting to know them on an individual level, to build that interpersonal relationship. But because of the high case loads that social workers have, like, you're really always time constrained. And yeah, that is one of the challenges that social workers face. Another thing is that there is very low funding in social work. Like, the clients group that social workers serve are very large with very complex needs, and sometimes funding is not enough. Like, you have very limited resources, so there's a limit to the kind of help that you can offer, even though people need like so much help. So another thing is that, like, there's such high turnover in social work, even though like there's always like there's some stability. If you choose this as a career path, you always have like a job. There's also very high turnover. People change jobs very frequently in social work due to the high levels of stress that is involved in the job. So these are some of the challenges. Like, there are so many out there that you can find out. So they asked me how I thought that I could manage these types of challenges. I talked about how I would utilize like supervision. But I realized that as a social worker, my caseload is so high. I could talk to my managers and see how we could potentially reduce, or find out ideas on how I can manage my caseloads. And I also talked about personal care and how I would prioritize my mental health, and ask to take a break if I need to, and then go and refresh and come back. So yeah, there are so many ways that we can manage the stresses that comes with our working life, right? So yes, those are some of the things that I talked about. And the next category is skills. Like, what skills do social workers need to be able to effectively engage with service users in their careers? Like, what kind of skills do you need? Like, communication is one key skill that you need to have as a social worker. Like, effective communication, speaking to people, and then listening to people as well, because you would have to, like, as you are doing assessments, you need to listen to people's stories, people's lived experiences. Then you would be able to pick up very relevant, pertinent points to go into your assessment. But you also need to be able to communicate effectively. Sometimes there are very difficult messages that you need to pass on to families, parents, things like that, and you need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to communicate effectively as well, to be able to build that relationship, because you're coming into this person's life. and you need to be able to build that initial rapport to get them to open up to you, to tell them about very personal issues. So communication is one very important skill. You need to also be empathetic as a social worker. You need to be able to put yourself into people's shoes, to understand what they're going through, to be able to respond in an appropriate way without being judgmental or without being oppressive in your practice. So you need to have compassion, and you need to be a good team player as well. So as a social worker, you'll be working with other agencies like education, like school and police. You need to be able to know how to effectively engage in these group situations, how to work effectively with people to be able to get the best outcomes for the families they are serving. So those are some of the skills that I mentioned in my interview. So the next category is like just general knowledge about social work, and this could be anything at all. In my case, I got a question about discrimination. What is discrimination? Like, guys, what is discrimination? We all know what discrimination is, when someone is being discriminated against, or when people are treated, differently because of like some characteristics that they have. Like maybe we could be women could be like, we could be discriminated against based on our gender. Maybe women are treated less favorably than men in workplace situations, or like there's so many protected characteristics, disabilities. People are treated differently because maybe they're disabled, like just things that like characteristics that make people receive less favorable treatment compared to other groups. So yes, why do social workers need to understand what discrimination is? Because basically, like, the people that you be serving are usually in marginalized position. Like, usually people that you be serving, the clients group that social workers serve have so many disadvantages. They are way down the class ladder. Like, so yes, those are the kind of people you'll be dealing with. So you need to understand issues about discrimination, be able to recognize when these are happening, and know how to stand up for people, because usually these people's voices are suppressed, and so you need to be able to know how to advocate for the people that are serving. That's why it's really important for you to know about issues around discrimination as a social worker. So yes, that's about that one. There are other questions which you can have access to if you send me an email. Then they ask me about student life in general, like, what do you think would be the challenges and opportunities of being a social work student? Like, the social work course is very intensive. Like, there are placement commitments, before academics, things like that. So like, managing all these things can be very challenging, like when it comes to how to manage your time effectively to make sure that you are fulfilling all these obligations that you have as a student. So I talked about those. And then what opportunities? I think I mentioned the fact that as a social work student, I would have the opportunity to learn alongside, other students from, let's say, medicine or occupational therapy. Like, there is inter-course learning, for lack of a better term. So yes, those will give me the opportunity to start developing interagency working abilities, like knowing how to effectively, work alongside these people when I eventually become a social worker, because that is what the life as a social worker really looks like. Then finally, they talked about teamwork. Of course, teamwork has to feature everywhere, right? Describe a situation where you work in a team or a group. So I talked about, at this point, I couldn't really I think I got a bit stuck here, but I remember talking about working as in my role as an HR assistant, how I needed to collaborate with people from other departments, like the accounts departments, in terms of coming up with payroll issues. Like, you need to be able to submit time records in time, make sure they're accurate, communicate effectively. If there's any points for me to clarify, guys, you need to be very creative in these situations. If nothing is coming to mind, just make up something quickly and make it relevant to the point that I'm trying to explain. So yes, another point and question under teamwork was, what might you need to develop in how you work in a group setting? So this is like where reflection comes into play. You don't always function effectively in a group situation, right? So you need to be able to point out your weaknesses, like what's makes you not function effectively in a group situation. Maybe you're not able to articulate your point properly. maybe, yeah, like just whatever weakness you have. This is something that it's personal to you that you need to think about. So you just need to think about yourself, what your strengths are in a team situation, what your weaknesses are, and be able to articulate that in your interview. So yes, those are the questions that was asked generally. As you can see, these are questions that you should be able to answer easily if you've done your research, like in your personal statements writing process, and the research and process for you to even determine whether social work is the course for you. So yes, guys, that is all that we have in today's video. I hope you find it helpful. I have these questions. If you need them, just send me an email. It will be in the description box below, and I would forward it to you. Yes, and that hopefully that can help you in your preparation process. I believe there's a ton of sample interview questions online as well that you can get. So yes, just get your research hat on and go, smash that interview. And on that note, I wish you the very best in your application process. If there's any other thing that I can, any other information that I can share, if you need further clarification, feel free to leave it in the comment section or come on to my Instagram or send me an email and I'll be sure to respond to you. And yes, guys, that's all I have for you in today's video. If you found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed. And, like this video, share it with people who might find it informative in any way. And I will see you in my next one.